I was drowning in my own success. Every single day I'd be up ready to work by 7:30 and I wouldn't stop until after 6 p.m. I was on 50 plus calls a day and some of them were over an hour long, answering the same question over and over and over again. And here's the thing. I made pretty dang good money. I was a top performer, but I was completely maxed out. Then I discovered something that totally changed everything. And it wasn't about working harder. It was working smarter, which I know, you've probably all heard that. But let me paint a picture here for you of what my life looked like back in 2015. I was a recruiter for a trucking company, and if you've ever been a recruiter, ever before, let me tell you, it can be a grind. Every day I'd be reviewing between 200 and 400 applications. And out of those, maybe 10 would qualify on paper. And out of those 10, I'd spend about an hour or so, or sometimes more, on the phone with each of them, answering the same questions. Again, answering those same questions, like what's the pay? What's the home time? What are the running lanes? What kind of insurance do you offer? And I wanted to answer those questions, right? Of course, they're real people. They were planning on leaving their current jobs that they had been at for years. Maybe they had families. This was their livelihood. So of course I wanted to answer those questions for them. But my director wanted me to get through those calls a whole lot faster, spend less time on each of those calls, be more efficient. And I tried, but every time I did that, I would rush someone, and by rushing them, they would get very defensive. They'd say things like, oh, you're being too salesy, or, making me feel like I didn't care and that I was some sort of machine. And they'd call me a recruiter in the most disrespectful way, and you would know if you know what I mean. And that absolutely killed me because I did care. They didn't think that I had ethics, and here I was trying to be extremely ethical by sharing everything. Here's what made it all worse than just being busy. I worked from home. My kids were home. They were preschool age, younger than that, one of them. They were young enough that they still wanted to play, like go to the park, hang out with me, spend time at lunch together. But I didn't have time for that. I would work through my lunch. I would go pick up the older one from preschool at 4. Then I'd come back at 5, work while I was making dinner and finishing calls around 6. And then I'd prep for the next day later in the evening. And even though I was working 10 plus hours a day, I wasn't bringing in more money than I was before because I was capped. I could only make so many calls. I could only hire so many people because we only had so many trucks. I was a hamster on a wheel, spinning faster and faster, but going absolutely nowhere. And then one day, it hit me. I was listening to a webinar about, working smarter, not harder. I was also reading this 4-hour work week, I mean, not simultaneously, but, within that time period. And I was also following a couple of YouTubers who were talking about marketing and reach. And I got to think about it, and I was like, hey, you know what? I went to school for communications and journalism. I did reporting. I interned at NBC. I know what I can do. I know I can do this. So what if instead of answering the same question over and over, 50 plus times a day on the phone, I just recorded a video answering them just once. So what I did is I drove to the terminal, which was about 3.5 hours away. I asked one of my friends who was the head of operations to hold my phone, and she recorded it. It ended up being less than a minute of me standing in front of the office. I was so nervous, and I have this twitch on my upper lip and nose that it's pretty common for me, but anyways, it was very noticeable. I was super nervous. I hadn't been in front of the camera for years, but I did it, and I posted it. And that video, it got a couple hundred views. I know. So it didn't go viral. I totally understand. But it didn't need to because people started calling in. They were already pre-approved based off of the information that I gave them through the video because they had watched the video. And they already knew what the home time was, what the pay range was, what our insurance was. And here's what totally blew my mind. The calls that I did take, they were shorter, they were better, and I had more time. So I kept going. I started doing these things, what I called Monday Minutes, and it would be a quick video every Monday answering some of the common questions that I'd get. And then people started showing up to these live events, and they'd hop on these lives with me At this point, I was doing both YouTube and Facebook Lives, and they'd ask questions in real time and I'd answer them for all of them. So one question, one video would reach hundreds of people. And sometimes I get, just a handful of people, but that's all right. It's still reaching more than one. And some of my videos, yeah, they would reach hundreds of people. With one answer, I'd help dozens of applicants all at once. And drivers started telling me how much they wish that other companies would do the same thing. Now, here's why I'm telling you this story. Because this isn't about recruiting. This is about any business where you're answering the same question over and over again. Maybe you're a consultant and your clients keep asking you about the process, or maybe you sell a product and customers are always asking you about the product, how it works. Maybe you're a coach and your prospects keep asking about pricing. You don't need to keep repeating yourself. You just need to record it. And the best part of it, it doesn't have to be fancy. My first video was 30 seconds or so. It was shot on a phone in front of an office, no editing, no B-roll. It was, if you don't know what B-roll is, who cares? It was just me and it worked. And that first video, my CFO noticed and the director of my director, and they asked me to double down on it. So that's when I started doing these weekly live events on both YouTube and Facebook. And eventually this turned into a full-time social media marketing position. Yeah, I taught myself video marketing. I fell in love with the process, and now I help business owners do the same thing because every business can use this for marketing, for recruiting, and for retention. You don't need to be that hamster on the wheel. You don't need to sacrifice time with your family, and you don't need to work harder. You just need to work smarter and more efficiently. So here's what I want you to do. If you are a business owner who's tired of answering the same questions over and over again, I want to help you. I'm hosting a free webinar where I walk you through the exact system on how I used to do this and how to take the questions that you're already answering and turn them into videos that work for you 24/7. The link is in the description and it is completely free. I promise it'll change the way that you think about marketing. And if you've got value from this video, make sure you subscribe because next week I'm going to show you the exact first video that I made and why it worked. Thanks for watching. See you next week.